The galaxy had always been a place of wonder, mystery, and danger, a vast expanse filled with countless civilizations, each vying for survival in a universe that cared little for the ambitions of its inhabitants. Among these countless species, none were as underestimated as humanity, a race that had emerged from the third planet of an unremarkable star, Sul. For centuries, humans had struggled to find their place among the stars, often overlooked by more advanced civilizations who saw them as primitive, backward, and inconsequential. The Prions, a dominant race in the galaxy, were among the many who held this view, seeing humanity as nothing more than a minor nuisance, ripe for conquest. The Prions had spent millennia perfecting their war machine, their empire sprawling across multiple star systems, with their fleets unmatched in both number and power. They were confident, arrogant even, believing that no force could stand against them, especially not the fledgling humans who had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. But what the Prions did not know, what they could not have known, was that humanity had a secret, a relic of the past so powerful that it defied comprehension. Long before the Prions had even learned to harness fire, humanity's ancestors had built an Armada, a fleet of warships so advanced, so deadly, that it had been hidden away in the far reaches of the solar system, locked in stasis, waiting for a day when it would be needed again. The discovery of this Armada, 800,000 ancient warships, had been nothing short of miraculous. In the early days of space exploration, a deep space probe had stumbled upon the fleet, hidden within the Kuiper Belt, its ships dormant but intact, preserved in the icy depths of space. These warships, known as the Dreadnoughts, were remnants of a bygone era, built by an ancient human civilization that had long since vanished, leaving behind only myths and legends. For decades, Earth's brightest minds had worked in secret, painstakingly repairing, upgrading, and reactivating the Dreadnoughts, integrating them with the latest human technology while preserving their original formidable design. The project, codenamed Operation Retribution, was humanity's last line of defense, a trump card to be played only in the direst of circumstances. The existence of the Dreadnoughts was known to only a handful of individuals within Earth's military and scientific community, with the rest of the galaxy blissfully unaware of the sleeping giants lurking in the shadows. As the Prions prepared their invasion of Earth, confident in their superiority, Admiral Russell Greene, the commander of Operation Retribution, knew that the time had come to awaken the Dreadnoughts. Russell Greene was a man who had seen more than his fair share of battles. A veteran of countless skirmishes and conflicts, he had risen through the ranks not through ambition, but through sheer necessity. He was a man of few words, his face weathered and lined with the scars of both physical and emotional wounds. Yet despite the many battles he had fought, Greene had never faced a challenge as daunting as the one that now loomed before him. The Prions were coming, their massive fleet bearing down on Earth with the intent of subjugating humanity once and for all. The Galactic Council, a coalition of advanced civilizations, had refused to intervene, dismissing humanity's pleas for assistance as the desperate cries of a doomed species. Alone and outnumbered, Greene knew that humanity's only hope lay in the Dreadnoughts, those ancient warships that had once brought entire star systems to their knees. As he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Retribution, Greene watched as the last of the Dreadnoughts were brought online, their engines humming to life after millennia of silence. The sight was awe-inspiring, a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of a species that refused to be extinguished. The Prions had underestimated humanity, but they would soon learn the true meaning of fear. As the Prion fleet entered Earth's orbit, their ships gleaming with the cold, sterile light of a civilization that had long since lost its soul, Greene gave the order to engage. The Dreadnoughts, hidden within dimensional rift bunkers scattered across the solar system, emerged from their hiding places, their massive forms dwarfing even the largest of the Prion ships. The Prions, who had expected an easy victory, were taken aback, their arrogance quickly giving way to confusion and panic as they beheld the sheer size and number of the human fleet. 800,000 Dreadnoughts, Each armed with weapons of unimaginable power, stood ready to defend Earth, their ancient armor gleaming with the light of 1,000 stars. The battle that followed was nothing short of cataclysmic, a clash of titans that shook the very fabric of space-time. The Prions, desperate to salvage their pride, threw everything they had at the dreadnoughts, their energy weapons lashing out in a furious storm of destruction. But the dreadnoughts, with their impenetrable shields and advanced weaponry, absorbed the onslaught without flinching, their hulls barely scratched by the Prion assault. And then, with a calm precision that spoke of centuries of warfare, the dreadnoughts returned fire. The first volley from the dreadnoughts was a sight to behold, a symphony of destruction that tore through the Prion fleet like a hot knife through butter. Energy beams, bright enough to rival the light of a supernova, lanced out from the dreadnoughts, slicing through the Prion ships with surgical precision. Hulls buckled and shattered under the relentless assault, entire vessels crumpling as if they were made of paper. The Prions, who had never before faced an enemy they could not easily overpower, found themselves hopelessly outmatched. Their advanced shields, which had protected them from countless foes, proved useless against the raw power of the dreadnought's weaponry. Panic spread through the Prion ranks as ship after ship was destroyed, their once formidable fleet reduced to a smoldering ruin. On the bridge of the Retribution, Green watched the carnage unfold, his expression grim but resolute. He knew that this was only the beginning, that the Prions would not give up so easily. They would regroup, they would retaliate, and they would bring their full might to bear against humanity. But for now, the tide had turned in humanity's favor, and Green intended to press the advantage. As the last of the Prion ships fled the battlefield, their tails between their legs, Green gave the order to pursue. The dreadnoughts, their engines roaring with newfound purpose, surged forward, giving chase to the retreating Prion fleet. The battle moved beyond Earth's orbit, out into the cold, dark reaches of space, where the dreadnoughts hunted the Prions with the relentless determination of predators closing in on their prey. The Prions, desperate to escape, called for reinforcements, summoning their most powerful warships to defend against the onslaught. Among these was the Juggernaut, a ship so massive that it blotted out the stars, a leviathan bristling with weapons and shields so advanced that the Prions believed it to be invincible. But the dreadnoughts, with their ancient and powerful technology, were more than a match for the Juggernaut. As the Juggernaut fired its main weapon, a beam of energy so intense that it could vaporize entire planets, 5 dreadnoughts threw themselves into its path, their shields absorbing the energy and saving Earth from certain destruction. But in doing so, the dreadnoughts sacrificed themselves, their hulls disintegrating under the strain. The loss was devastating, but it was not in vain. With the Juggernaut's main weapon temporarily disabled, Green saw his chance. "All ships, target the Juggernaut's power core," Green commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority. The remaining dreadnoughts focused their fire on the coordinates Green provided, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. The Juggernaut's shields flared, struggling to hold back the barrage, but it was no use. The combined firepower of the dreadnoughts was too much, and with a final, desperate effort, they breached the Juggernaut's defenses. The explosion that followed was cataclysmic, a supernova of energy that tore through the Prion fleet, consuming ships in its fiery wake. The Juggernaut, the pride of the Prion Empire, was no more, reduced to a field of debris scattered across the void. The Prions, seeing their most powerful weapon destroyed, broke ranks, their morale shattered. They had come to conquer, but they had found only death and destruction. The remnants of the Prion fleet fled back to their homeworlds, leaving behind the wreckage of their once proud Armada. But the battle was far from over. On Earth, Prion ground forces had made planetfall, targeting major population centers in a last-ditch effort to cripple humanity. Green, aware of the threat, dispatched the 19th Marine Expeditionary Unit to counter the invasion, ordering them to hold the line until reinforcements could arrive. The fighting was brutal, with the Prions using their advanced technology to wreak havoc on the ground. But the Marines, seasoned warriors who had faced countless enemies in the past, fought back with everything they had, refusing to give an inch. The streets of Earth's cities became battlegrounds, with buildings reduced to rubble and the sky filled with the smoke of war. But the Marines held, their resolve unbreakable, their courage unmatched. As the battle raged on, Green knew that time was running out. The Prions were desperate, and desperation made them dangerous. If they could not conquer Earth, they would destroy it, and Green could not allow that to happen. With the ground battle intensifying, Green made a daring decision. He ordered 5 of the oldest and most heavily armored dreadnoughts, the Sentinels, to intercept a massive energy beam from the Juggernaut that was aimed directly at Earth. The Sentinels, knowing the cost, moved into position, their shields absorbing the energy and preventing the destruction of the planet. But the strain was too much, and one by one the Sentinels were destroyed, their sacrifice ensuring the survival of humanity. The loss was heavy, but it was a necessary one, for it bought Green the time he needed to execute his final plan. With the Prion fleet in disarray, Green ordered the remaining dreadnoughts to concentrate their fire on the Juggernaut's power core. The combined firepower was enough to breach the Juggernaut's defenses, and with a final devastating explosion, the Prion flagship was destroyed. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. As the Prion forces retreated, Green knew that they would be back, and next time, they would come in greater numbers with even more powerful weapons. But for now, Earth was safe, and humanity had proven that it was not to be trifled with. The dreadnoughts, battered but victorious, returned to their dimensional rift bunkers, where they would be repaired and upgraded for the battles to come. The people of Earth, who had watched the battle unfold with bated breath, erupted in celebration, their hearts filled with pride and hope. They had faced the greatest threat in their history and had emerged victorious, thanks to the courage and determination of their defenders. But Green, ever the realist, knew that the battle had only bought them time. The Prions would regroup, they would learn from their mistakes, and they would return, more determined than ever to conquer Earth. And when they did, humanity would need to be ready. In the weeks that followed, Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, repairing the dreadnoughts and upgrading them with the latest human technology. The ancient warships, already formidable, were made even more powerful, with new weapons, shields, and engines that would allow them to face any threat that came their way. But even as the dreadnoughts were prepared for the next battle, Green knew that they could not fight the Prions alone. They needed allies, and they needed them fast. The Galactic Council, which had ignored humanity's pleas for help, was now all too aware of the threat posed by the Prions. The Council, composed of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, had long believed that they were untouchable, that their technological superiority would protect them from any threat. But the battle for Earth had shown them that even the most powerful empires could be brought low by a determined enemy. As Earth's leaders reached out to the Galactic Council, seeking alliances and support, Green prepared for the next phase of the war. He knew that the Prions were not the only threat facing humanity. There were others lurking in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. And when they did, humanity would need to be ready. The dreadnoughts, those ancient and powerful warships, were humanity's greatest weapon, but they were not invincible. They could be destroyed, and if that happened, Earth would be defenseless. Green knew that they needed to build more ships, more powerful weapons, and they needed to do it fast. But there was no time to build new dreadnoughts, and so Green turned to a different solution. Deep within the heart of Earth's moon, hidden beneath layers of rock and metal, was a secret project known only to a few. Project Phoenix, a plan to create a new generation of warships, using the technology of the dreadnoughts, but with the advancements of modern science. These ships, known as the Phoenix class, would be faster, more powerful, and more versatile than the dreadnoughts. They would be able to strike anywhere in the galaxy at any time, and they would be humanity's best hope for survival. But the project was not without its risks. The technology used in the Phoenix class was experimental, untested, and it could fail. But Green knew that they had no choice. The Prions were coming, and they needed to be ready. As the first of the Phoenix-class ships rolled off the assembly line, Green could not help but feel a sense of pride. These ships, built with the blood, sweat, and tears of humanity's finest, engineers were a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the human race. They were not just weapons, they were symbols of hope, of defiance, of a refusal to be conquered. As the Phoenix-class ships joined the dreadnoughts in Earth's defense fleet, Green knew that they were ready. The Prions would come, but they would find a united and determined humanity ready to defend their home with everything they had. The next phase of the war began with a daring plan. Green, knowing that the Prions were planning a massive invasion, decided to take the fight to them. He assembled a task force of the most advanced ships in Earth's fleet, including the Phoenix class and the newly upgraded dreadnoughts, and prepared to strike at the heart of the Prion Empire. The plan was risky, but if it succeeded, it would cripple the Prion war machine and give humanity the breathing room it needed to prepare for the next phase of the war. The task force, moving with the precision and stealth of a well-oiled machine, slipped through the Prion defenses, striking at key targets with devastating efficiency. Communication arrays, defense grids, and shipyards were destroyed in a series of lightning-fast raids, leaving the Prion Empire reeling. But the Prions were not without their own tricks. As the task force moved deeper into Prion territory, they encountered a new and terrifying weapon. The Prions had developed a superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems with a single shot. This weapon, known as the Star Crusher, was a doomsday device, a last-ditch effort by the Prions to turn the tide of the war. Green, realizing the threat, knew that they had to destroy the Star Crusher before it could be used. The task force, battered and bruised from weeks of constant battle, moved to engage the Star Crusher. The battle that followed was one of the most intense of the war, with the fate of entire star systems hanging in the balance. The Star Crusher, a massive structure the size of a small moon, was heavily defended, with layers of shields and weapons that made it nearly invincible. But the task force, led by the Phoenix-class ships, fought with a determination born of desperation. They knew that failure was not an option, that if the Star Crusher fired, it would mean the end of humanity. The battle raged on for hours, with both sides taking heavy losses. But in the end, it was the ingenuity of the human engineers that won the day. Using a tactic that had been developed in the early days of space warfare, the task force managed to overload the Star Crusher's power core, causing it to implode in a spectacular explosion that lit up the night sky. The destruction of the Star Crusher was a turning point in the war. The Prions, their most powerful weapon destroyed, were forced to retreat, their empire in disarray. But the victory came at a heavy cost. The task force, though successful, had been decimated, with many of Earth's finest ships and crews lost in the battle. Green, though relieved that the threat had been neutralized, could not shake the feeling that the war was far from over. The Prions were down, but they were not out, and Green knew that they would be back, stronger and more determined than ever. As Earth licked its wounds and prepared for the next phase of the war, Green turned his attention to a new threat. The Zaran Empire, a powerful and secretive civilization that had remained neutral during the conflict, had begun to make moves that suggested they were preparing to join the fray. The Zaran were an enigma, their technology and motives shrouded in mystery. But one thing was clear: if they chose to side with the Prions, it would spell disaster for humanity. Green knew that they could not afford to fight a war on two fronts, and so he devised a plan to neutralize the Zaran threat before it could materialize. Using the Phoenix-class ships, which were capable of stealth operations that the dreadnoughts could not match, Green launched a series of covert missions deep into Zaran territory. These missions, designed to gather intelligence and sabotage key Zaran facilities, were risky but necessary. The Zaran, though advanced, were not prepared for the level of precision and ruthlessness that the Phoenix-class ships brought to the table. One by one, Zaran installations were destroyed, their defenses compromised, and their fleets crippled. The Zaran, realizing that they were being systematically dismantled, sued for peace, agreeing to remain neutral in exchange for a cessation of hostilities. With the Zaran threat neutralized, Green turned his attention back to the Prions. The Prion Empire, though weakened, was far from defeated. They had regrouped, rebuilt, and were preparing for a final, all-out assault on Earth. But this time, Green was ready. The dreadnoughts, now fully upgraded and supported by the Phoenix-class ships, were a force to be reckoned with. Earth's defenses had been fortified, with massive orbital platforms and early warning systems in place to detect any threat. The stage was set for the final battle, a showdown that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. As the Priyan fleet entered the solar system, their numbers overwhelming, Green gave the order to engage. The battle that followed was unlike any that had come before, a clash of titans that shook the very fabric of space-time. The dreadnoughts, their weapons blazing, cut through the Priyan ranks with a ferocity that left the aliens reeling. But the Pryans, desperate and cornered, fought back with everything they had, their ships swarming the dreadnoughts like angry hornets. The battle raged on for days, with both sides taking heavy losses. But in the end, it was humanity's resilience, its determination to survive against all odds, that won the day. The Prians, their fleet decimated and their empire in ruins, had no choice but to surrender. The war was over, but the cost had been high. Earth had lost many of its finest soldiers and ships, and the scars of the conflict would take years to heal. But humanity had survived, and in doing so had proven that it was not to be trifled with. The dreadnoughts, those ancient and powerful warships, had done their job, protecting Earth from a threat that had once seemed insurmountable. As the dust settled and the galaxy began to rebuild, Green knew that humanity's place among the stars was now secure. But even as the celebrations began, Green could not shake the feeling that the war was not truly over. There were other threats out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with civilizations that would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. And so, even as Earth began to rebuild, Green continued to prepare. The dreadnoughts, now symbols of humanity's strength and resilience, were kept in readiness, their crews ever vigilant. The Phoenix-class ships, with their advanced technology and stealth capabilities, continued to patrol the galaxy, ready to strike at a moment's notice. The war had been won, but the battle for the future was just beginning. Green, ever the realist, knew that they could not afford to let their guard down. The galaxy was full of dangers, both known and unknown, and humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. But as he stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as the stars stretched out before him, Green allowed himself a moment of hope. They had faced the greatest threat in their history and had emerged victorious. They had proven that they were not just survivors, but warriors, capable of defending their home against any foe. And with the dreadnoughts at their side, there was no challenge too great, no enemy too powerful that they could not overcome. As Earth entered a new era of peace and prosperity, Green knew that the future was bright. They had been tested, and they had passed with flying colors. The galaxy had taken notice, and now humanity stood among the stars, not as a minor player, but as a force to be reckoned with. The dreadnoughts, those ancient and powerful warships, had ensured that humanity's legacy would endure. And as the stars beckoned, full of wonder and mystery, Green knew that they were ready. Ready to explore, to discover, and to defend their home against any threat that dared to challenge them. The future was theirs, and they would face it with courage, determination, and the knowledge that they had earned their place among the stars. Green stood on the bridge of the Retribution, the battle-scarred flagship of humanity's newly fortified fleet, watching as the last remnants of the Priyan Empire's once mighty Armada retreated into the inky blackness of space. The victory had been hard won, and the cost was staggering. Countless lives had been lost. Ships that had once been symbols of Earth's strength, now reduced to twisted hulks, drifting through the void. Yet, as the silence of space settled around him, Green couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered in the darkness, something more insidious than the Pryans or the Zarin. It was a sense that had been gnawing at him for weeks, a gut feeling that the war was not truly over, that the peace they had fought so hard to secure was nothing more than a fragile illusion. As the fleet returned to Earth, greeted by jubilant crowds and celebrations that spanned the globe, Green found himself unable to join in the festivities. He stood apart from the revelry, his mind churning with the weight of responsibility and the knowledge that the galaxy was still full of unknown dangers. The dreadnoughts had served their purpose, proving humanity's might to any who would dare challenge it. But Green knew that the universe was vast and full of mysteries that even their most advanced technology could not fathom. The Prions had been powerful, but they were not the only empire in the galaxy. And Green was all too aware that others would be watching, waiting to see how humanity would fare in the aftermath of such a colossal conflict. Days turned into weeks as the people of Earth began the long process of rebuilding, both physically and emotionally. The scars of war were deep, but there was a renewed sense of purpose among the survivors, a determination to ensure that such a conflict would never happen again. Green, however, could not afford the luxury of rest. His nights were filled with strategy meetings and briefings, his days spent overseeing the reconstruction of the fleet and the fortification of Earth's defenses. The Phoenix-class ships, those sleek new warships that had played a crucial role in the final victory, were now the backbone of humanity's space force, their numbers steadily growing as more were commissioned and brought into service. But it was not enough. Green knew that no matter how many ships they built, no matter how powerful their weapons became, there was always the possibility that they would face an enemy they could not defeat. The galaxy was full of unknowns, and Green was determined to be prepared for whatever came next. He ordered the construction of new deep space listening posts, advanced early warning systems that would give them as much notice as possible of any approaching threat. He also commissioned the development of new weapons and technologies, pushing the boundaries of what humanity had ever achieved before. They had to be ready, not just for the next battle, but for the next war, the one that might very well determine the fate of the human race. As the months passed, Green's fears began to crystallize into a plan. He knew that the best defense was a good offense, and so he began to formulate a strategy to take the fight to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, to find and neutralize any threats before they could reach Earth. The Phoenix-class ships, with their advanced stealth capabilities and cutting-edge weaponry, were the perfect tools for this mission. Green began selecting crews, the best and brightest from across the fleet, those who had proven themselves in the fires of battle and who were ready to take on the unknown. These crews would become humanity's first line of defense, venturing into the darkest corners of the galaxy to ensure that no enemy could catch them unprepared. The first mission was simple enough, a reconnaissance of the uncharted regions beyond the galaxy's edge, where few had ever ventured and fewer still had returned. The Phoenix-class ships, with their advanced scanning equipment and cloaking technology, would slip into these regions unnoticed, gathering intelligence and mapping out potential threats. But even as the mission got underway, Green could not shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that the very act of exploring these unknown regions would awaken something ancient and malevolent, something that had been lying in wait for eons, biding its time until humanity was foolish enough to venture into its domain. And so it was that the Phoenix-class ships set out on their mission, slipping through space with the grace and silence of a shadow. The crews were prepared for anything, or so they thought. But what they encountered in those dark, forgotten corners of the galaxy was beyond anything they had ever imagined. Strange, twisted forms of life, unlike anything in the known universe, drifted through the void, their motives inscrutable, their powers unfathomable. The ships encountered ruins of long-dead civilizations, their technology ancient yet eerily advanced, hinting at a power that had once rivaled or even surpassed humanity's own. And then there were the anomalies, pockets of space where the laws of physics seemed to break down, where time and space twisted and folded in on themselves in ways that defied all understanding. The reports that filtered back to Green were troubling, to say the least. The crews of the Phoenix-class ships were encountering things that their instruments could barely comprehend, let alone explain. And yet, there was a pattern, a growing sense that all of these anomalies, these ancient ruins and strange life forms, were connected somehow, part of a larger tapestry that was slowly being revealed. Green pored over the data, his mind racing to connect the dots, to understand what it all meant. It was as if the galaxy itself was trying to tell them something, to warn them of a danger that was approaching, something that had been set in motion long before humanity had even existed. And then, the first of the Phoenix-class ships failed to report back. There was no warning, no distress signal, just a sudden, inexplicable silence. Green ordered the remaining ships to pull back, to regroup and assess the situation, but even as they began their retreat, another ship went dark, then another. It was as if they were being hunted, picked off one by an enemy they could not see, could not detect. Panic began to spread through the fleet, the crews on edge, knowing that whatever was out there was unlike anything they had ever faced before. Green, watching from the safety of Earth, knew that he had no choice but to send reinforcements. The dreadnoughts, those ancient and powerful warships that had once saved humanity from certain doom, were called into action once again. They were slow, lumbering behemoths compared to the sleek Phoenix-class ships, but they were also nearly indestructible, their massive hulls capable of withstanding the most devastating attacks. Green ordered them to the front lines, to establish a defensive perimeter and protect the remaining Phoenix-class ships as they retreated. But even the dreadnoughts were not immune to the terror that awaited them in the dark. As they approached the last known location of the Phoenix-class ships, they too began to experience anomalies, strange fluctuations in their systems, unexplained malfunctions that defied all logic. And then, as they closed in on the source of the disturbance, they encountered something that none of them could have anticipated. A massive, ancient structure, drifting in the void, its surface covered in symbols and markings that no one could decipher. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a relic of a civilization that had long since vanished, yet somehow still exuding a sense of power, of menace. The dreadnoughts moved into position, their weapons trained on the structure, ready to fire at a moment's notice. But Green, watching from afar, ordered them to hold their fire. He knew that this was no ordinary enemy, that they were dealing with forces beyond their comprehension. He ordered a team of specialists to be sent in, experts in ancient technology and alien cultures, to try and make sense of what they were facing. The team, composed of the brightest minds from across the galaxy, boarded the dreadnoughts and prepared to descend to the surface of the structure.